Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, good.
So for Jesus fucking Christ, Charlie, for people just joining us now, which is everybody. Good, you got the Jason Connell exasperated hand
Yep.
position 3 seconds into this session. So here's what just happened, and the reason that I'm already disrupted. I said to Charlie right before we started recording, he's like, ready to go, man. And he paused for unnaturally long and then said, yeah. And I thought to myself, why is there hesitation? The reason there's hesitation is because Charlie wanted to dress up as a clown with a snorkel and a birthday cake before beginning tonight.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Fuck, it's gone. The clown's gone. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Charlie.
Sure.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Since the last time we talked, I can hear an echo, by the way. I can hear myself. I don't know why that is. But the last time we chatted, you gave me marching orders to talk to 5 people who work at companies or could potentially introduce me to people at companies that I wanted to
Yes.
work with. I went in kind of with some I went kind of directly. Others I went in a more roundabout fashion because it was a little bit more challenging.
Okay.
So I can show you everything I did in this call. Otherwise, we can start kind of where you want, and you can kind of lead.
Well, no, that's where to start. How'd it go?
It was good. It was uncomfortable for me, surprisingly, because some of these people I didn't know very well, or they were very at this juncture in our relationship, they were very loose ties. So one of them went pretty well. So for instance, I reached out to my friend Chris, who I hadn't spoken to in a really long time. Like, we're not friends, but we're, friendly, and we are acquaintances, and we've done stuff in the past together. I haven't talked to him in forever, and I reached out to him after I saw that he got a new job at YouTube, and we had a long chat, a text exchange, which I sent to you, and we're going to incorporate it in the course to see how people can kind of just bring this stuff up pretty organically. And that went well. And he said, it might be a couple months because I just had a kid, but ultimately, like, doing the Google authors route is probably the best way to speak for that company. You have to have a Googler, a person at Google internally, kind of bring you in.
Mm-hmm.
But he asked me to, which reminds me, I have to send him an outline. I made a note to do that somewhere, but let me pause and make sure I'm doing that. Send Chris outline for. So he asked me to send him an outline, and what I did was I sent him 3 signed copies of my book, plus a letter that would make it easy for him to go up to the event director and just hand the letter to them, because the letter had statistics on it, like, if your employees are engaged, they're 87% less likely to leave your company. 2 out of 3 employees are disengaged, and CEOs only check employee engagement once a year. 98% of CEOs only check it once per year.
Wow.
And it costs companies $3,400 out of every $10,000 in salary when an employee is disengaged, either from lack of productivity, or from wanting to leave the company, or from dragging everybody else down. Like, it's a huge hole in the ship. And while YouTube does a really good job, they can always benefit from it. And here was one, like, kind of moral conflict I kind of felt while I was doing this is, Malcolm Gladwell put this in perspective in a podcast that he did, where he was like, people are in higher education, people donate hundreds of millions of dollars to, like, Stanford and Harvard, these organizations that have billions and billions and billions of dollars. And he said where the impact could really be is if people were donating to these slightly lesser schools, or even way lesser schools, that if you donated a few $1 million to them, it could go a really long way. Or, you know, whatever. The point was, like, if you focus on the Stanfords, you're going to make negligible impact, versus if you focus on the places that really need it, you can make a massive contribution with the same amount of effort. And I kind of felt that way when I was reaching out to like YouTube and Pixar and Google and BuzzFeed. It's like all these companies get play already. And it made me wonder if, like, would this be more impactful if I was approaching companies that needed it more? And so let's see, the other the other place I reached out to is Stanford. And Stanford was like, because I had their contact information, you know, I'd talked to them, and so I reached out to a few of their teams, and they were like, you know, whatever. Didn't seem as interested in it. Good luck. And so I also reached out to BuzzFeed and Pixar. I don't have a contact at BuzzFeed, so I looked one up and did kind of the same thing where I sent the book and the letter, or I sent a few books. I did the same thing with Pixar. I did have a contact there. My cousin's husband's sister. So it was like, you know, relatively close. I'd met her before. And so I'll see how that goes. I haven't heard back from them yet. The books and the letter and everything. Oh, I wanted to show you this. So let me screenshot what this looks like. So can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did was I set up these unique pages for everyone I reached out to, and on my website, and then I would make them a video message. So this woman's name was Peggy at Pixar, and I recorded myself talking and saying, hey, you know, you got my books. I just wanted to let you know what this is about, why I sent it to you, and the video kind of explains, like, hey, this is who I am. You might be wondering, why is this weirdo sending me free books? You know, I want to work with Pixar, like, and I kind of explain it, and then I give, I say what I have to offer. Here, I'll make this a little easier to see. So I say what I have to offer. I call their attention to the demo video. I show other people at other companies reading my book. And then I give them some next steps to take. And finally, it's like, hey, if you want to set up a call, here's that. So that's what I did with each of them. Like, I wrote them, as you suggested, a handwritten thank you note with the link to their, like, custom message. So it was again, like, a roundabout way of doing it, probably more work than it needed to be, I guess. But, you know, with the people I didn't know as well, I was like, well, I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible for them and stack it as much in my favor as I can, because I really wanted to connect with those companies. So,
dude, a lot to unpack here, but first and foremost, Great work. This is huge.
Thanks.
Like, and I don't know that you mentioned this, but I've seen the exchange with YouTube. And that's very promising. Like, you can, over years, you get the sense of how deals shake out. This looks really, really good. I understand it's a month or two away because of this kid, but that's awesome. Here's the one thing that comes to mind before we unpack some of this stuff. The books that you sent, follow up with those. Like, it's nice if they email you and say, holy shit, thanks, Charlie. But if they haven't, after 2 weeks or so goes by, just like shoot them a quick email saying like, hey, hope you enjoyed the book. Let me know if you have any questions. You don't have to go like such a hard sell on the phone call where it's like, let me know when to schedule a call. They'll understand what you're communicating. The Stanford thing is interesting. And that was actually in my notes. The like, do I want to work with, well, the question you were implicitly asking is, I believe less famous institutions can benefit more from my work. What do I do about that? I think that's a really sharp question. And one of the things I had on the list to bring up, depending on how this went. So you reached out in total to 5 companies. Is that right?
Yeah. And the other person I reached out to is Amy, who I'm good friends with, who she used to be the assistant for Tim Ferriss. And so I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow and asking her about what are some good conferences and associations that she recommends I reach out to, because I was really trying to think like, okay, what are the people that are most likely to get me in a position to either maximize my options or to be exactly what I want, and I focused on those 5 people. So cool. Amy, Pixar, YouTube, BuzzFeed, and Stanford. Stanford I did because I just met up with them like a month ago, and I'm going to stick with that because I know there's options there. But the first team that I kind of reached out to was like, oh, we just don't see this really being the right fit for our staff or our team. So
keep good intuition. So with a conference, it's just one decision maker. If they give you a confident no, then don't waste your time. With a business and a college or university, so conferences and professional development groups, usually one decision maker. Businesses with like a couple hundred employees or more, and virtually every single college with more than 2,000 students, they have multiple decision makers. So your intuition to stick with Stanford, if you want to speak there, is really sharp. Now, these are like impressive name brands. And when we set this up a couple, 2 months ago when we began, your 3-year vision was to be working for these organizations. And I think it's a mistake I see people making all the time is they assume that they have to wait to live their dreams. I might suggest, and you were circling around this, for the next 5, so I'm going to propose in a second, holding you accountable and getting these out quickly. I might suggest for the next 5, doing less famous or approaching less famous organizations, because here's what I want for you, and here's how the strategy works. I'd like you to get these gigs, these first gigs, as quickly as possible. And what we're going to cover today is how to use your existing gigs and roll those into new gigs, both repeat business from your existing clients, as well as using every single talk that you give as a tool to generate new leads. So I'd like to, the YouTube deal will pay off. I think that will close. Your attitude towards Stanford makes me believe that will close as well. And by the way, great work with filming videos specifically for people. As you know, like nobody does that, and it's a really good tool to get attention.
Yeah.
But here's what I propose. You put as much time and effort into this as is right for you. But what I would love to see is between now and when you sign your first 3 new clients is once a week asking 3 to 5 friends to perform introductions. And they don't have to be to fancy companies. What they have to be is to companies that have a mission that aligns with you, a company that is creating a more happy, playful, vibrant world. And the ones that are not as famous as Pixar and YouTube will be easier to access. And like you said, they'll likely be able to gain more both existentially and financially from your work than say a Pixar, which is likely already a pretty well-oiled machine.
Right.
What do you think of all that?
I think it's good. I guess the challenge I kind of had was, okay, I have this list of companies that I'd like to do work with, and asking friends of mine, if they can perform an introduction, that's all good with me. I guess it's like, how do I know which companies they know?
You know, like let's say Invention Land in Pittsburgh is a company that no one really knows about. I know about it because they have an amazing office space and they're very creative and like playful and all this stuff. I don't know anybody who is connected to them. Like, what do I do in those cases? And like with you, for instance, do I just ask you, hey, do you know any companies that are well aligned with the type of work that I want to be doing or could benefit from it? Or like, what is the question I need to ask friends of mine?
Great question. That's really smart. Here's what I'd recommend doing. So start off by making a list of like your 5 or 10 friends. I'd go with 10 personally, just to leverage everything in your favor that are the most likely to have these connections. And by the way, I won't necessarily have connections to businesses, but I do to universities, and we'll talk about that. Or I'll like, let me think about it and find the right ones and introduce you. But I would like make a list of your 5 or 10. And honestly, like these can be friends. They don't need to be like weak ties. That's somebody you met at a conference where you spoke or whatever. And ask them and describe your dream organization. Say, hey, you know, like Pixar, but perhaps not as famous or whatever. And ask if they know anyone at an organization like that, and then let them introduce you. Because you're right. But I guess there is ways to uncover that information, but it's weird. Like you could go on everyone's LinkedIn ever to see if they have a connection to DreamWorks.
Right. And I don't want to do that. Like I hate doing that. I actually felt uncomfortable reaching out to the girl from BuzzFeed. I also sent books to Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, because I was like, and I sent you a message saying,
yeah,
of course, this is like ground zero for people who are about to burn out. And it really is. It just is, you know. There was an article in the Atlantic about like entrepreneurs, and it showed a picture of a guy in the fetal position underneath his desk. And those guys, like they're 20-year-olds with millions of dollars riding on them and other people's salaries. Like it's super stressful. And anyway, so I sent him books, but the reason I asked like what type of question you should ask is because if you ask the right question, you can either or you can get them to be co-conspirators. If you ask the wrong question or the question with the wrong wording, it can shut them down and make them feel like, God, I'm doing this guy like he's like asking me a favor when I'm so busy. So I guess the question is like I don't think it should be which organizations can you introduce me to, or can you introduce me to this organization, but like describing the types of organizations that you want to work with and asking them like, how would you approach this situation? Like which what companies would you be focusing on if you were in my shoes? And then giving them that permission to be, I don't know, to be you is, I think, more likely to result in them helping out.
I like that. If somebody has a connection that you want, I would recommend politely and directly asking for it. But in general, yeah, if you can if you can recruit somebody to be a co-conspirator, that's a lot smoother because then they feel invested in your success.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, I really think one thing the literature on entrepreneurship and sales gets wrong is like they try and uncover just repeatable patterns that always work. I think the better way of approaching this is like what works well for you, Charlie, like what's in your lane, what's in your zone. And I think it's much more natural for you to draw people into your projects and into your work. So if that feels right, like go that route. Just make sure that you are extending the invitation to people who can help you.
All right, cool.
So what's I'm going to start checking in with you on Fridays. What is a realistic number of invitations or emails or whatever to send to either?
At this point, I would say 3 in terms of like, and I don't think it's going to be emails. Actually, I think I'm just going to have to text people and say, hey, can we get on the phone, and then do a call with them.
I have a lot of friends who are connected to these kinds, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm getting, I'm grabbing breakfast with 2 friends of mine who are videographers who know everybody in the playful space. Like, their motto for their videography business is "Give yourself permission to play," or "Here's your permission to play." And they're friends with all these huge companies. It's my friend Hefe. I don't know if I've ever
You've mentioned him. I've never met him.
I mean, he did videography for Obama, National Geographic. Like he just knows everybody. So
Do
yeah.
you know Michael Gavin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he might be a good person too, because he
actually reached out to me recently.
Did he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
all the videographer people is actually, it's really, now that I think about it, is smart because they do know everybody. They really do.
And Gebs, and I'm sure Hefe, like very charismatic, personable people who are well liked by their clients. But look, before this slips through my mind, I am taking notes on my follow-up work for you and all that. But if, as I was saying before this call, like been a crazy week, friend just had a baby. If somehow this slips through the cracks, make me one of your 3 for this week or next, because there's a handful of people that I would like to introduce you to who would benefit from your work.
Cool.
And also just, we talked about this briefly, but keep in mind that like my experience, Hefe's experience, Geb's, whomever's experience, like for the right type of person, for me, this feels like a total win because I trust you. I know your work is good. So to turn around to one of my former clients or one of my contacts and say, here's a trusted provider. His work has helped me. I believe it will help you. I suggest taking a phone call. Nothing is lost here. My social capital goes up.
Right.
Their life gets easier. Your life gets better. So
awesome.
I am uncomfortable when I make those asks too, but there's a bit of a divorce in the experience of performing an introduction and helping someone and how it feels to ask it.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Plus, you know that I'm a great dresser and I'll never like embarrass you in any way. So
that's the main point. Yeah. You'll never embarrass me in any way. Right. Last time Shane, you and your girlfriend talked, that was not my direct experience. Anyways, before I get too fucking off track, happy clown birthday. Good. Okay, so I'm gonna check in with you on Fridays, 3 a week. As we've said before, I think it's very misguided to shame or punish for like areas where somebody misses accountability. If I notice that after like a month you just haven't done any, we'll jump on a call and talk. But otherwise, let's aim for 3 a week until we get these first couple of gigs and take it from there.
Okay.
So I want to go over, well, there's 2 options and I'll let you direct this. The main next step right now is just getting these first gigs and you're on that path. After we get those first gigs, after you get the leads, you'll have the sales call, which we've done, and you're going to do well with that. That's when the game starts to change. You can forever go back into your Rolodex and ask for more introductions and get clients that way. But a smarter way to structure your business is to use your existing clients to get new ones and to delight your existing clients so significantly that they want to hire you again and again. And that's the next phase of what I want to go over. And I want you to direct me. Do you want to start building that system and those structures now, or do you want to pause until you have sales calls going?
I want to pause until I nail the sales calls because I totally agree with you 100%. Until we get to that place, I mean, it might be helpful, but I kind of like building this as we go along.
I'd like that too. Let me just go over my notes to make sure that the sequence works. Yeah, that's Charlie. I think that's smarter. I would much rather focus on this one stage and get it right and make sure the system's working before we move on. There's just one part of this that I think we should cover now so that you're familiar with it during the sales call. So we talked last time about crafting customer experience, and I think one element, and we were focused on like the gifting and connecting strategy with your customer. There's one other element that comes into play before the actual speech, and it's during the sales call, and that's the pre-speech survey. And I'm going to show you one in just a second, but let me explain how it looks and feels. So one of the differences at your skill level on stage, one of the main differences that your buyer will notice is the perceived value. Like your ability on stage, your content is exceptional. Really, really, really good. Now what we need to do to help your clients be more comfortable surrendering to the reality that you are exceptional and expect that your keynote fee is somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 is we have to start crafting that experience in the direction. Now, one of what normally happens, even for name speakers, to be honest, that are commanding hundreds of thousands of dollars a keynote, is they package their keynote, they describe it, the customer buys it. Maybe they'll do a little bit of customization. You know, they'll focus it on sales, or they'll focus it on a certain stage of the sales cycle, or they'll have a meeting with the executives. But really, that's all the customization that tends to take place. If you want to create a higher level of experienced and perceived value and quality, what I recommend doing is, to the best of your ability, catering your keynote to the audience. Now, you know your audience well enough so that your keynote's written to meet them where they're at, but you have to help the buyer understand. And the easiest way to do that is by using a pre-speech survey. And this is something that you'll mention for the first time in the sales call, the 30-minute, 40-minute call where you're asking questions. And in the last, well, the meet, once you've listened to them and you're explaining how you work with them, the line is something along the lines of, now look, I'm going to give you the broad strokes. And this is in the recorded sales call that I will give to you so you can hear me do it. But it's something along the lines of like, look, I'll give you the broad strokes of the speech that I'm going to deliver to your students if I have the privilege of working with you. But I want you to know that it's customized. And the specific process I like to go through is 2 weeks before the speech. I'd like to give you a link to a survey. It'll only take about 2 minutes for your audience members to fill out. But if you're open to it, I'd like you to send the survey to your audience members and ask them to fill it out. We only need about 10%, but I'm going to use stories and data from this survey to craft and customize the speech. So actually the meat and bones of your speech, Charlie, like on play and creativity and anxiety management, is going to be the same. But there'll be a couple examples from the pre-speech survey that you use. So let me show you the one that I've been using. I'll give you a link to this so you can model yours after. And it's important that you're just familiar with it because it comes up in the sales call. So any questions about that theory, that concept before I switch over?
I've seen it done, and it works really well. Yeah, no questions about that.
Okay, so I'm going to share screens, entire screen. And so so on the last speaking tour that I did, I spoke for the University of Kentucky in Louisville. They were hosting this conference on student leadership. And this is the literal pre-speech survey that went out. And it's very straightforward. This one probably took about 5 minutes for them to fill out. But let me just walk you through the questions. Those are the important parts. And what you're really trying to do here is get a sense for the audience and help your customer understand how much you care. And this is being filled out by the attendees of the conference. And I think I got a 20-30% response rate. Nothing huge, but easily enough to work with. So first question, what's the accomplishment as an individual or student leader you're most proud of? Just want to sort of, what I'm asking in this question is, where are they at in life? Are they building multi-million-dollar companies? Are they trying to get a 3.5 GPA? Are they somewhere in between? Whatever. Next question is really valuable to me. What's the biggest challenge you're currently facing? And you'll notice a lot of times with conferences, and especially with your work, a lot of people will start being really honest and they'll say, you know, look, I'm getting good grades and I'm making a lot of money, but I feel a strong desire to have an intimate relationship, but I just can't, I'm lonely, or whatever it is.
Right.
These questions, the yes, completely, no, not at all, sometimes, but not always, I use these to understand, but what I'm actually using them for, and what I suggest you do, is I'm using these because I'm gathering data on that specific conference and then feeding that data right back into the conference. Like the information and the stats that come from this go up on the slides for that individual conference. And it takes like 2 seconds to do because you can download the results to Excel.
So what's the most important question on this survey to you?
So to me, it's probably the first one right here, or sorry, the first one I'm highlighting. Can you relate to the following statement? As a leader and individual, I often feel a strong sense of isolation.
Why don't you start with that one then?
I should have. That's a good, like, here's the honest answer. I've never had anybody at all look this over. there's a total flaw in my logic and I missed it.
No. It's not a flaw in your logic. It's like, no, I used to do the same thing with surveys and stuff, which is, you start with, I used to start with ask their name, ask their email, give them some warm-up questions. But the wisdom I gained from survey experts is you always ask the most important question first.
Yeah, that's smart.
That's what you want to get.
I'm glad you said that out loud, and that'll change how I do it. And then the rest, anyways, you get the idea. So the other questions that are sort of worth mentioning, I'll just give you a link so you can model yours. This one was always really interesting to me because the audiences that I worked with are going to be probably like your audiences. They tended to be exceptional and very high performing. And question 7 is, what's your biggest fear? And there's room for the fear to be a fear of spiders or a fear of dying alone or anything in between. And surprisingly often it was like my expectation in the beginning when I asked this question was that people's fears would be scattered and it'd be all different. As it played out, many of my audience shared fears. And one of the magic moments in speeches is like when you can observe a commonality about an audience that is not immediately obvious and then reporting that commonality to the audience is just pure magic. So I might think about questions that would uncover that. And for me, biggest fear was one. And then this, question 8, do you have specific questions that you'd like covered? There's an interesting thing there. If I were to go back and redo that survey, I wouldn't ask that. Like intuitively, that's a good question. Never gained any valuable information for me. And I don't know that it will for you simply because you're the expert. Like you, this sounds a little arrogant, but you know what they need better than they do. If they knew what they needed and how to get it, they wouldn't have hired you.
That's very true, which is like what solutions or what answers are you looking for is not the right thing. The best is to focus on what, maybe you could ask like, what are some things that you've tried? Like what are some solutions or things that you've tried that haven't worked out or have been kind of frustrating for you or whatever. But yeah, I think people generally don't, if they're in a certain state, they don't know what they really want. They just want the problem solved.
Yeah, exactly. And we're the experts on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a link. Start thinking about, I realize for me, the beard is fairly redundant. It's also kind of strange that the only prop they give you is a birthday.
I know.
Like they give you snorkels, a bunch of different.
They really went over the top with everything else, but they really struggled with the props.
They were like totally creative. Like their creative juice was just gone at that point. Like, all right, prop is just
just give them a cake with one candle.
Good, dude. Okay, so here's what I propose. I'm gonna start checking in with you on Fridays to see if you got 3.
Blow out the candle. It's a trick candle.
Damn it, Google you gave me a trick candle. Fuck! My cake went away and Charlie turned into a dog. Here's what I propose. I'm gonna be checking in every Friday. Obviously, you're the most distracting human that I know. I think I told this story on a different. I'm about to lose it. I think I told the story. Oh, I got the hat follows you around. I think I told the story in a different pod, whatever it is we're doing, Google Hangout Live. I will never forget the moment I'm giving a speech in front of 100 people in a foreign country and you hold up a stupid picture of a panda to trigger me in the middle of the speech. And I'm starting to get flashbacks to this right now with the clown Halo dog. Here's what I propose we do before I completely lose my shit on this. I'm going to start checking with you on every Friday as it starts to gain traction, which I don't think will take long. I think this is like a couple of weeks. Then we'll begin the next process. Or actually, here's what I'd love to really get this right. Check in as we're gaining traction. Have another call. As you're gaining traction, we'll have another call when you need help. And those sticking points would be if this strategy of asking for introductions isn't working, or if you're having trouble asking, which you're not. I know it causes tension, but you're doing it anyways, which is good. So if one of those come up, we'll do that. And then if the sales call goes really poorly, we'll talk then. But really, our next call.
I just laugh because it's like I've done a lot of sales calls, and the sales calls aren't the thing I'm worried about at all, because I follow your script and the script works, and it's really comfortable doing that. The challenge is just being able to get on the phone with somebody who's like, yeah, I'm a buyer, and now is the time that I want to talk.
And that's why we have this like controlled follow-up system with the CRM.
Right.
But if you're doing 3 a week and you're generating 1 introduction a week, which is low, I believe, in my experience, you'll have buyers that are interested in chatting soon. And for corporate buyers, some of them, if you get connected with the CFO, will realize, oh, this is a room for improvement. Let's deploy now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a matter of consistency. Anyways, as those sales calls start to line up, and as the deals start to come into more vivid vision, then we'll come back and do the final session on repeat business and using existing leads for new business, or
okay.
Existing new leads. So before I let you go, what questions do you have?
I don't know if I have any. Let me.
Question is, why would a cat ever snorkel? Cats hate water.
I don't know. Why does the cat have a birthday cake?
Because it's its birthday. That makes much more sense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I'm going to be following up with the books, approaching less famous organizations via friends.
Just real quickly, you're smart to have sent door openers in the form of books to these organizations, books and videos, but it's going to be more, you will have a higher close rate by asking friends for introductions because the trust transfer.
Yeah, I learned that from that process of going through it, because I was like, this is just so much freaking work, and it's not even necessarily going to decision makers. It's like this would be so much easier in just dedicating time to doing a bunch of calls with people who already know me.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like you've got this.
I think so. I think it was good that I kind of went through that. It's been good to have this accountability, and being forced to go through that process, and post evaluation, realizing, man, that was a lot of it wasn't like busy work, but it was like, this is way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, you made this way more difficult than it needed to be. So, and it was good to confront that, because if we hadn't been having this conversation on a regular basis, I probably, I may have done more of that and been like, yeah, it's not working out, and not really having to face the honest truth of like, look, this is way more simple than you're making it out to be.
Yeah. There's 2 things in sales that I think people confuse often. One is that if you have a good product and you understand sales, it's not complicated. The game is just, how do I get in front of the right people? Right. And that is half a dozen effective ways to do that. The other way people delude themselves is, and we've talked about this on 2 calls now, like, it is uncomfortable to ask for an introduction. So what people end up doing is they invest in sales channels that require less discomfort, like social media marketing, that just doesn't work.
Right.
So they avoid the tension when really all they needed to do was sit with the tension for a few minutes and deal with it.
Yeah, it's totally true. And it gives you like false metrics of like vanity metrics of accomplishment. So
exactly.
I got like 100,000 followers or whatever. Great. But you haven't made a single, major sale. So
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good. I will be checking in starting Friday. Make me one of the people you ask for intros for in the next, either this week or next.
Okay.
And I think that's it. Let me pause for just a second. I feel like there's one other thing I wanted to go over, but we haven't. Check. It seems like everything. Oh yeah, that was the last thing. That strategy of sending videos and books to people is a great strategy, but just to help you see the entire field, once we land these gigs. Oh, sorry, two last things. One, so we're gonna I'm gonna check in with you every week, obviously, and if for some reason sales calls aren't materializing after about a month or 5 weeks, we'll change strategies. I'd be very surprised. I've never seen that, but there's other strategies we can use.
Okay.
This is just the most hanging fruit.
Right.
But I don't want you spending your time on stuff that just isn't producing results.
Okay.
The other thing though is like to help you see the entire field. Once we get these first gigs, let's say that you have one in like the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
What I would recommend doing then is we'll target 5 or 6 companies in the Bay Area that you can help. We'll make them VIP guests at your speech, and like you'll start courting them by sending books and a video and taking them out to dinner. So the strategy you're coming to works, but it's much better to get buyers in an existing speech and then basically do an hour-long infomercial for them. It is to ask for a sales call, because this way.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish that.
Because this way, like you're pre-vetted by one of their peers, and you already have that social trust that buyers need. So their peers said, "Yeah, we trust Harley Huhn." You've made them feel special with this video, this book, whatever else we put in that package. You're asking for an hour of their time. I'll suggest also that you take them out for dinner, them and everyone else afterwards. And from there, like it is so ridiculously easy to convert those people into clients.
Yeah, that's true. So how did you learn this stuff? Like, did you learn it while you were, early on as a performer before you were?
No. The like 200 books you see behind me are representative of another 800 on my Kindle or something. Probably 10 to 20 are sales and just trial and error. Like just repeated trial and error of like seeing what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Both direct experience and observing through friends.
Cool. Right on.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you as always for learning me, and I appreciate all the feedback and definitely the accountability. You look better in a monocle.
Thank you.
So consider adding that into your arsenal.
Will do. Thanks, man. Really excited for you. I'll be talking to you on Friday, and let me know how I can support you between now and then.
All right. Perfect.
All right.
Thanks,
Jason.
Jason.
Have a good week.
Later.